Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on an operating system that so many of us use every single day, but, well, its real origin story is something else entirely. It's a story about community, about innovation, and what happens when a tech giant just lets an experiment run wild.
It's a pretty wild question to ask, right? But it really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. It's a story about how Google laid out this incredible blueprint, and then a global community of hobbyists just picked it up and ran with it, completely shaping the product that we all know today. So let's dive in.
Okay, so our story really kicks off with that blueprint. You got to go back to 2009. Google did something really interesting. They basically released the entire source code for a new, super web-focused operating system out into the wild, for anyone to see, to use, and, importantly, to change. And this right here, this is the key to everything. ChromeOS is not the same thing as the ChromeOS you get on a brand new Chromebook from the store. You should think of it more like a recipe, or the fundamental architecture that Google just made public. It's the raw, developmental, community-facing version. While ChromeOS, well, that's the final, polished product that Google puts its official stamp on. And here's the biggest difference between the two. See, ChromiumOS is built around the open-source Chromium web browser. That's the same foundation that, Microsoft Edge and Brave use. But ChromeOS, the official one, uses Google's own proprietary Chrome browser, which comes with all its extra features and deep integrations. And that little distinction, that was the key that unlocked the door for the community to jump in and start building.
So how does this thing actually work? Well, the architecture is actually pretty simple, which is kind of its genius. It's broken down into three main layers. At the very top, you've got the browser and the window manager. That's basically everything you see and click on. Right below that, you've got the system-level software. So the Linux kernel, all the drivers, the real nuts and bolts that make the machine go. And then at the very bottom, you have the firmware, which is the super essential code that boots up the hardware in the first place. Simple, elegant, and most importantly, totally open.
Now, because that design was so open, it didn't just stay in Google's labs. Not for long anyway. Almost immediately, really passionate developers and hobbyists started to tinker with it. And this is where the project really took on a life of its own.
I mean, this is the absolute magic of open source, right? People could just download the code, compile it themselves, and try to get it running on their own computers, not just on some official piece of hardware. They started adding new features, squashing bugs, and then sharing all their work online for others to use. And out of all of these hobbyists, one really stood out. A 17-year-old student from Liverpool, England, named Liam McLaughlin, who went by the online name Hexe. His builds with names like ChromiumOS Flow weren't just getting the job done, they were genuinely innovative. He was adding features that even Google's own engineers hadn't put in yet, like support for the Java programming language. He was basically showing the entire world what ChromiumOS was capable of.
And believe me, the world noticed. By May of 2010, these unofficial, community-compiled versions of ChromiumOS have been downloaded over 1 million times. This wasn't some niche little project anymore. This had become a massive grassroots movement. It proved there is this real hunger for a lightweight, web-first operating system.
And you'd think Google might have been annoyed by this, but they weren't. They were impressed. Sundar Pichai, who, would later become Google's CEO, publicly praised the work. He called it an unintended consequence of open source development and said that if you decide to be open, you have to be open all the way. The community's passion was basically validating Google's entire experiment for them.
This community passion didn't just stay confined to online forums either. It sparked a brand new idea with a huge real-world application, giving old, forgotten computers a brand new life.
Entrepreneurs and whole companies saw what Hexe and all the others had proven. ChromiumOS was incredibly lightweight, it was fast, and it could run on just about anything. And they had this light bulb moment. They realized it was the perfect tool to breathe new life into older PCs and laptops, especially in places like schools that just couldn't afford brand new hardware. And from that realization, a whole ecosystem of what they call forks, just modified versions, started to pop up. A company called Neverware created something called CloudReady, which was aimed specifically at schools, letting them turn their old Windows PCs into fast, usable Chromebook-like devices. Another one, FlintOS, which later became FydeOS, focused on building versions for a huge range of hardware, even the super popular Raspberry Pi. Yeah, the hobbyist project was officially growing up.
And this all leads us to the final and maybe the most satisfying part of this whole story. After years and years of community development, the project came right back around to where it all started.
So you have to imagine Google was watching all of this unfold. They saw companies like Neverware build a really successful business all around reviving old hardware with ChromiumOS. The community hadn't just improved the code, they had also identified the absolute killer app for it: sustainability and accessibility. And this is how the whole story just closes its loop so perfectly. In 2020, Google went ahead and acquired Neverware, the company behind CloudReady. Then, just 2 years later, they launched ChromeOS Flex. And what is that? It's an official Google product that does exactly what the community had been doing for a decade, letting anyone install a version of ChromeOS on old PCs and Macs. The community's vision had become official Google strategy.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway here? Well, first, it's that innovation doesn't just happen inside corporate headquarters. A lot of times, it happens in communities. Second, it shows that a really passionate user base can be the best R&D lab in the entire world, finding problems a company never even knew it could solve. And finally, this whole journey created a truly sustainable solution that's kept millions of old computers out of landfills and put them back to work.
You know, the story of ChromiumOS is just this fantastic reminder that sometimes the most powerful ideas don't come from a boardroom. They come from a teenager in their bedroom or a community of coders, and really just the simple desire to build something cool and then share it with the world. It really makes you wonder, what's being built in a garage or on a public code repository right now that's going to change everything?